What's up, everyone? My name is ZayNews, and this is the ZayNews Podcast, where we talk about all things hoops, whether it's the NBA, college basketball, youth hoops, you name it. If it's about basketball, then we talk about it here. Now, you know the NBA just started a couple weeks ago, and it's really been heating up with a lot of awesome performances. So we're going to primarily focus on that, especially today, just because I feel like I got a lot to catch up on. I know you guys know because I mentioned it last time. I was in Asia for 2 weeks, right? I had pre-recorded some videos for you guys and kept the content coming. But now there's a lot to go over, a lot to touch on, and I want to make sure I touch on the majority of it that's happening in the NBA. So without further ado, let's get into it. But before we do that, if you like the content, make sure to like, subscribe, tell a friend to tell a friend. Leave a comment. I want the comments. I want the engagement. I want you to tell me when I'm tripping. I want you to tell me when I'm on point. I want that dialogue. I want that engagement because that just fosters a positive community. And that is what we are trying to develop here, just surrounding the wonderful game of basketball that we all love. So again, without further ado, let's get into it now. And let's start here. Now, obviously, I know the news came out today that Nico Harrison got fired. I don't want to start there, right? I don't want to start there because we know, like, we all could have saw that coming, right? If we had a crystal ball, I think a lot of us would have predicted that, especially with the way the Mavs have been playing as of late. We knew he was going to be on a short leash. That's just the reality of making a trade like that. But I want to start here because this was exciting to me, actually. And I'm sure a lot of people feel a lot of different ways. But Cade Cunningham last night scored 46 points on 45 shot attempts. And I can hear the box stat watchers just screaming, right? When they saw that stat line, I know it just was a gut punch for those guys, right? The guys who don't actually watch the games, and they are only watching it from this narrow view of efficiency. And I got to tell you, I loved seeing it. Now, that's not me saying this was the greatest performance of all time or anything like that, but I loved seeing Cade Cunningham last night empty the clip and shoot the ball 45 times, especially when you start to add context. Because when you start to add context, things start to make sense, and you realize sometimes that is what's needed to win a game, right? A willingness to go out on your shield, a willingness to shoot the ball 45 freaking times just to put that amount of pressure on the defensive alone, right? Just doing that alone does something to a defense where now they're like, holy cow, if we're not careful, this guy's going to go at our jugular every possession. And that's what Cade Cunningham did last night. So let's break that down, right? Let's break that down really quick. Now, the reason I'm break down briefly, I'm not going to go too far into it, but essentially, let's frame it like this, right? For all the people who maybe hated on that performance, who maybe saw that performance was like, he only made 14 shots, he only shot like 37% from the field. Now let's set the tone, right? Let's set the plot, right? Let's set the plot. So the Detroit Pistons last night faced off against the Washington Wizards, and the Detroit Pistons, for obvious reasons, were shorthanded because usually in games like that, games that you're pretty confident you can win against a team who's not very good, you may sit some guys. So they did. I think they definitely sat three guys in Tobias Harris, Karis LeVert, and I believe Sir Thompson. But I think I'm missing one there. So they sat three or four of their primary guys who take on a lot of the scoring, take on a lot of the defense, take on a lot of the ball handling duties, right? Karis LeVert is like their backup ball handler in that sense. And you could imagine when you're sitting four of your primary guys that that's going to call on the best player who did play to take on more of the responsibility. And that's exactly what happened. Now, that's not even to include the reads that, or the way that Washington rather was defending Cade Cunningham allowed for him to take that many shots, right? Because they very easily could have doubled Cade and made other guys beat them, but they said, no, we're going to allow Cade to be the one to be aggressive and try and score 60 points to beat us, right? Teams take on those sorts of mindsets all the time, right? Whether it's the role players are going to beat us, whether it's the main guys going to beat us, right? They try to either take away one or the other, right? Because if all of them are cooking, it's impossible in a lot of instances, right? So that's what happened, right? That's what happened. They tried to take away the role guys. They tried to make Cade beat him. And even though he shot inefficiently, he stayed aggressive. Even though it wasn't a great team, they were shorthanded. The Detroit Pistons were against the Wizards. And Cade Cunningham did what he had to do. And when you shoot the ball 45 times, people don't fully understand what that means. They don't fully understand the pressure that puts on a defense. They don't fully understand the way that makes you play, because now you are constantly worried about the guy with the ball. I was a guy who did my work early when I played defense, right? I was a really good defender. I was a pretty versatile defender. That's one of my favorite parts about my game, actually. Um, and one of the best way I would stop a guy was to stop them early. Meaning, I knew for the most part, if I slowed a guy down, made him miss his first 3 or 4 shot attempts, the rest of the game was going to be easy. Even the greatest players, especially at the college level, you make them miss those first 3 or 4 attempts, they're going to start thinking. They're going to start, passing the ball more. They're going to start being less aggressive. And that just plays to your favor. So I knew if I could do my work early, play great defense, get some stops early, that was going to play in their mind for the rest of the game. Now, picture this as a defender. You have a guy who misses 3 or 4 shots early, doesn't sway them at all. They shoot 15 more shots in the first half, right? And then they come out the second half, you try and do the same thing, do your work early, set the tone. Doesn't matter. They just continue to shoot. They continue to be aggressive. That wears on you as a defender. That wears on you as a defensive team as a whole. And that puts so much pressure on the defense, right? And it opens things up for your teammates. And not to mention, right, he took a lot of good shots. He missed a lot of them. He very easily could have scored 55 to 60 points if he just made, 4 or 5 more looks that were very makeable for him. But for whatever reason, some of those shots just didn't bounce his way last night, and that's okay. But I got to tell you guys, I'm so happy to see that. And not to mention, right, Donovan Mitchell across the way shot 28 times, right? And they were in a barn burner. And you best believe, when Darius Garland went down, they needed Donovan Mitchell to be that aggressive, right? They needed him to shoot those shots, even though he didn't make, I think he went 10 for 28, even though he didn't make all of them, right? They needed him to be aggressive and try to score. And sometimes your team needs that out of you. And I think we got to just continue to get away from this idea that efficiency is the only way, right? Or if you're inefficient for one game, that dictates whether you had a good game or not, because it doesn't tell the full story, right? Those box sheet stats never tell the full story, right? You could have a great game and shoot 7 for 22. You know what I'm saying? It may feel ugly, it may look ugly, but if you're doing the dirty work, if you're finding ways to get your teammates involved, if you're extending possessions, getting tip outs, rebounding, all that sort of stuff, you can have a good way. You can have an impact on winning, and ultimately, as the best player, dictate whether your team wins or loses, right? It's never just one thing that sways a good or bad performance. And I think we have to realize that and just begin to detach ourselves, pull back a little bit on the efficiency, right? Not to say that efficiency isn't bad, not to say stats can't tell you a lot of things, right? They always have their place and they are always important. But my goodness, right? I think a lot of people would have looked at that game and called it a bad game. And from a shooting sense, I guess you can say that. But holistically, he did what he needed to do. And this is back to Cade Cunningham to help his team get the win. And for me personally, that's all I can ask out of my best player. I want them to go out on their shields. And if we feel like you need to be aggressive every time down, I want you to be aggressive every time down, much like this guy in the picture was. So moving on, just wanted to start there because I thought it was just cool to see, and it was, reminiscent of, the early 2000s when there were a lot of volume scorers in the league, and by necessity, right, because the way defense was being played and how hard it was to score and how little spacing there was, guys were letting that thing fly, right, and they didn't care about what the stat sheets read at the end of the game. They just cared about whether they were winning or not, right? And that's the mindset that I want to see guys have. Moving on, we got to touch on it, right? We got to talk about the elephant in the room, and that's Nico Harrison getting fired today. Now, to be honest with you guys, I maintained since that trade happened that this was the ownership, right? This was an ownership move. Personally, I swore up and down that there was no way that Nico Harrison made this move, because, and the writing was on the wall, right? It was new ownership came in. So sorry, I lost my train of thought. But new ownership had just come in. You have a huge contract that needs to be signed, right? It would have been the biggest contract in the history of the NBA last summer when Luka signed it, if they had still had him. And they had just put all this money in to develop real estate around the arenas, all this sort of stuff, buying a new franchise, the price tag that comes with that. And they're like, my goodness, now we have $75 million a year on the books in Luka Dončić, a guy who we think may be breaking down, a guy who we think doesn't have the right work ethic, a guy that we think just doesn't mesh well with our culture maybe. I don't know. So, I could have swore up and down that it was ownership, right? A money thing, and then, once money is an issue, you'll start finding other issues, right? And all the things I just mentioned maybe begin to play in a role. And I thought ownership was just like, look, we got to get him off the books. Let's get a cheaper all-star, or, and do that whole thing. And we'll just feel a little bit better about it. But apparently not, right? I listened to Shams on ESPN this morning on First Take, and he swore up and down that this was a Nico Harrison move, right? He is the one who went to the Dumonts, and he was like, look, I think if we can trade this guy, it would be better for the franchise. And he maintained it, right? He said this was Nico Harrison's idea. Now, obviously, ownership had to sign off on it, but ownership was, impressed with the work that Nico Harrison had done to build a team around Luka. They felt like Nico Harrison just was an extremely smart basketball mind, which, since then, things changed quick. And they just trusted him. They trusted him and they went with it. Now, I still am not fully convinced, but I guess, if Shams is saying it, if, everybody else is saying it, then I'll rock with it. And the reason I set it up like this is because if this was strictly Nico Harrison's idea, then he should never work in basketball again. Just to put it bluntly. If Anthony Davis had his injury history, but he was the same age as Luka Dončić, no sweat off the back. But the fact of the matter is, this was just a terrible trade. Absolutely terrible from top to bottom. You trade a guy, you bring in Anthony Davis, who is a fantastic player, future Hall of Famer, top 10, top 7 power forward of all time in that range, and just incredible defender, incredible offensive player when he's healthy. But he's 6 or 7 years older than Luka Dončić. He's been injury riddled. As a Lakers fan, thank you, but my goodness, right? Like, you just can't get over that. And I think sometimes people think that they are smarter than they actually are. And I think this is a classic case of that for Nico Harrison. I think he thought he was doing something that was just going to work out perfectly and everything was going to align and this was going to be the greatest trade. And to be fair, they haven't fully gotten to test it out because guys haven't been healthy. But that's kind of part of it, right? Like, you could have foresaw this happening. Kyrie Irving, though, ACL you never want to see, has had injuries throughout his career. Anthony Davis obviously has had injuries throughout his career, even though the previous year he played like 79 games, right? It's just a reality of it. And then you luck into Cooper Flagg, which at the very least for the ownership, right, you have a pillar to hang your hat on now for the next 10 years. And you can at least, frame this as this was Nico's fault. We're moving on. We got our number 1 pick. We got our guy. And I imagine, they're probably not going to. Maybe they give it next year. To be honest with you, I could foresee the Dallas Mavericks just saying, we need to get Anthony Davis back on the court, increase his trade value. And once we do that, let's just start our rebuild now and just kind of rip the Band-Aid off and go through the pain of it now, rather than trying to get everybody healthy next year, seeing what the team has next year. Guys are another year older, less trade value, less demand for them. And then it just becomes harder, a little bit harder year after year to get max value out of these guys and begin to rebuild your team. Because right now, the Dallas Mavericks have really no draft capital. They have limited trade assets outside of guys like Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving, who Kyrie still has to come back from his injury. And they're just in a weird spot, right? Especially for their future. And it's just sad to see. But in terms of Nico Harrison, last thing I'll say on this, if this was really Nico Harrison's decision and it wasn't ownership like, man, we need to cut our bill, right? We can't be spending all this money. We just spent all of it investing into this stuff. Then my goodness, right? Just a terrible, terrible decision. And I don't think I need to beat a dead horse. And this isn't anything to do necessarily with Anthony Davis or Max Christie or whatever. Those guys are great. They're amazing players. Anthony Davis is amazing. Max Christie, I still think, is going to be a very bright role player in the NBA for years to come. But it's really the Luka Dončić side of things, right? Like, you get rid of just a supremely talented offensive player, one of the best of this generation, if not the best of his generation by the time it's all said and done. And it's just, you don't do it. you don't do it. But I don't want to spend too much time on that. Everybody's, sharing their thoughts on that. Let's get into the basketball, right? Let's get into the basketball and what I've been seeing. So I want to start with the Lakers. I'm a Lakers fan, obviously. Got to start with the Lakers. And the Lakers have been playing good basketball. I don't want to say really good basketball. I know, we may kind of over exaggerate things and get a little bit hype when we were, 7-2. Now we're 8-3, I believe, where the Lakers are 8-3. The record looks good. I think there's a lot of things to be desired, but let's focus on the positives first. So what I'm liking from the Lakers so far, most of the time they're playing hard, and that is refreshing because the Lakers, since LeBron has gotten there, since AD has gotten there, LeBron and AD are exceptions because they're so good they can pick and choose things. But what that does to your culture is the guys around you begin to do that as well, right? And we've seen a lot of games, we've seen a lot of instances where, they just don't compete night in and night out at a high level. And it's been nice to see JJ Redick begin to change that culture where they're trying to get guys to compete night in and night out and really hang their hat on their effort. That's probably the favorite thing I've seen out of the Lakers. Now, with that said, Saturday night, watched Lakers versus Atlanta. That was a team that resembled teams that I don't want to have no part in watching anymore, right? I can't stand that lack of effort. And that team was just terrible. Luka Dončić, 22-11. Meaningless 22-11. His defense was terrible. His decision making was terrible. Worst game of the season. It made me want to, just go throw something off a roof, to be quite honest with you. DeAndre Ayton, it was like all the worst qualities of the guys who have really tried to start changing, some of some of those bad qualities came out in that game. Meaning DeAndre Ayton's lack of effort, his lack of willingness to compete, his lack of physicality all showed up. It was terrible to watch. I swear sometimes he sees plays happen and he just decides, I'm just not going to try. Or I'm just not going to give effort here, or it's like he decides that he already lost or something like that, right? Like if there's a ball up in the air and he doesn't think he has a good angle for it, he just won't make a play on it. He won't contest a shot if he feels like he's late for it. And I think some of it's just his mannerisms, right? So I may be being a little harsh, but when he doesn't compete hard, just everything looks so slow, everything looks so lazy, everything looks like he just doesn't care, right? And I think some of that is his mannerisms, but it just bugs you. You know what I'm saying? But that's one game, right? Over the course of the season, we have to be honest and we have to say that he has played tremendously overall and he's given great effort. He's competed at a high level. That game just felt like a game where Luka, DeAndre, and I think who had the most negativity surrounding some of their player qualities going into the season just came to light, right? So all the bad things we were saying about Luka being overweight, Luka looked like a skinny, overweight guy, right? He looked like overweight, lazy Luka who was settling for threes, making bad passes, being sloppy, blah, blah, blah. DeAndre, no effort, blah, blah, blah. Just terrible game, terrible game. And it was funny because I made a post that night talking about how Bronny and Jared Vanderbilt were literally the two best players that game, right? They were the only guys who were bright spots. And I looked at the stats in terms of on-off numbers. They really should have just sat the starters in the, midway through the second quarter, and we would have won the game because our bench outscored them, the rest of the way. And they played halfway through the third to the end of the game, and they won their minutes. So that was a terrible game. But the Lakers overall, I've loved that there's been more effort and more consistency in their effort. I think that's been my favorite thing about the Lakers. At the beginning of the season, I was worried it was feeling a little top heavy in terms of the scoring. First few games, right, Luka would have a big scoring burst. There'd be a few guys around 15 to 20, AR, Rui maybe, and then it'd just be a precipitous drop off. But as I've watched them more and more, I've really liked how JJ has instilled more movement into the offense. It's not just Luka pick and roll, Luka pick and roll, Luka pick and roll. It's Luka pick and roll, catch it in the mid post, move, cut, allow Austin Reeves to play, create, kick it out to Rui for the jump shot. Rui make a quick decision, one dribble pull up or shooting the three. So there's a lot more variety in their offense, and that makes me more comfortable in their scoring production still being a little bit top heavy. And as they've played more games, it's balanced out a little bit more, right? Every game, you'll see a guy like Rui, Marcus Smart, LaRavia in that 15 to 18 range. and then you'll have like 2 or 3 other guys, right around double figures, and then AR, plus 20, Luka plus 30, right? He's averaging like 37 right now. So the scoring has become much more spread out, which has been nice to see, because I was worried that it was just going to be a top heavy mess where you're just focusing on, or solely on one guy creating everything for you. Don't get me wrong, Luka still does a lot of the creating, but you know he should do a lot of the creating when you're that level of talent. And not to mention, this is without LeBron back. I would love to see LeBron just come back. And honestly, I said this at the beginning of the season, I would not be surprised if he's our third leading scorer, because I think LeBron has the capability to be that Swiss Army knife guy that we've talked about throughout the course of his career. But if he could come back, average 18 to 20, 7 boards, 7 assists, 28 minutes, we got ourselves something rolling, especially, just for the regular season, and just leaving LeBron in the best case possible to go into the playoffs healthy and just ready to compete at a high level. And then you got, keeping AR around like 24. Luka probably will end the season, I would imagine, around like 33-ish points per game. But I think that scoring parity would be perfect. And then, get what you can out of Rui. Rui keeps shooting the heck out of the ball, because he has been shooting the heck out of the ball. Laravia come off the bench, defend, get your opportunities on offense. Marcus Smart is who he is. We love Marcus Smart. He's been playing terrific. There's a lot of good things to like about this team, and I'm really liking the chemistry that they have. I'm really liking the balance that they're starting to have. There are some areas of opportunity, right? We have to continue to work on that effort level. I think that's something that JJ is going to have to continue to drill in, and just make sure guys don't become too relaxed. But if that effort level's there, continue to work on the defense. And the defense for me is a little just more systemic, learning how to play through things. But I think that will continue to grow, continue to get better. So I'm excited to see what that blossoms into. Their defensive ratings right now aren't particularly good in terms of like comparatively to the rest of the NBA. But I think it will improve. I think over time they will figure out their systems. Luka's been better on defense. Aiden has been better on defense. So I'm not too concerned with that. I think it will get better. But again, my favorite things to watch have been more consistency and effort. Their parity on offense is growing and continuing to grow, and it's not too one-dimensional, and it's not too top-heavy. And I think that will only help them throughout the course of the season. Yeah, I like where they're at. I think there's, anytime you lose to a team like Atlanta, Atlanta who was missing like 5 guys. This isn't just a normal Atlanta, because I'm high on Atlanta when they're healthy, but this was an Atlanta team who was bare bones, didn't have nobody on the court. Porzingis, Trey, Jalen Johnson didn't play. Nickeil Alexander-Walker didn't play. There was like 2 other guys, and it was like a head scratcher. Like, what is this? Even though we had, Austin Reeves and LeBron, it was still an unacceptable way to lose. Okay, but Luka. I'll talk about Luka specifically for a second, because he's definitely made some progress. 2 favorite things, right? We can talk about the numbers all day. We know Luka is going to produce, right? He's going to produce. He's going to play well on offense. He's going to, make reads. He's going to facilitate. He's going to score the ball. That's just who Luka is. But the 2 things that have really inspired me this year, Luka has been playing good defense. Great defense, no. All NBA defense, no. Luka Dončić, though, has been playing good defense. He has been in passing lanes. He has been engaged. He has been walling up when he gets switched on to bigger guys. He has been competing on the defensive end of the floor. And that has made their team a lot better. And that holds your other guys accountable to playing defense at a high level. Is he perfect? Is he playing defense all the time? Is he taking possessions off? Maybe sometimes. But for the most part, Luka's effort on the defensive end of the floor has been tremendous, and it's been amazing to see, and I'm really excited about that. Number 2 about Luka, his body language and his jawing at the refs has been way better this season. Way better this season. He is not arguing with refs after every play. And if he is talking to refs, it's not all the theatrics that were so annoying. It's not the yelling and the mean mugging like he's going to fight the refs and just doing stuff that was just annoying, right? You're not going to change the call, and that just affects the energy of your team. It affects the next possession. It affects the game overall, right? You allow the refs to have more of an impact on the game than they need to when you were constantly engaging with them and allowing them to dictate how you were feeling in that moment. And it has been so refreshing, even though he still talks to the refs, to not see him whining all the time to the refs, right? I don't know if that was a conversation him and JJ had in the offseason. It's a realization of him just becoming more mature, right? Because he's still a young guy. He's only 26. That has been amazing to see. And I think things like that are what real leadership is made of. When you are able to do and fix those things, that need to be fixed, that don't seem like a lot, but can really impact a game, team chemistry, the way your team is viewing the game. Because when your best player is upset at the refs, now everybody's upset at the refs. Now everybody's John. Now everybody's not as engaged in the game in the moment as they should be. That leads to missed reads. That leads to, blown assignments. That leads to missed shots. That leads to fouling. That leads to a spiral of things that just take you out the game. And now you're not being present and you're not competing at the highest level that you can be because you're worried about other stuff. So that has been refreshing to see. So tip my hat to Luka for changing those two things. Those are two big things that I think needed to be fixed, and he's definitely on his way. Not perfect, obviously, but making strides, big strides, is all you can ask for in somebody, right? Nothing happens overnight, and that has been tremendous to see. Moving on. Wanted to talk about the Clippers really quick. I'm going to talk about a lot of teams today, but definitely got to touch on the Clippers because all I heard from people in the offseason, the Clippers were signing all these guys. Oh man, the Clippers are so much better than the Lakers. They've had one of the best off seasons this summer, and this and that. And I don't want to say I told you so because I tried to approach the Clippers in a very positive light, right? I like that they re-signed Chris Paul. I like that they took a chance on Bradley Beal. But what I will say is I never thought that they were going to be better than the Lakers. And I think just the way that their team is made up leave something to be desired. And let me expand, right? When your two best players between Kawhi and James Harden, one of which has just struggled with injuries. No, not his fault. He's worked his butt off to get back on the court and has been refreshing to see him this early in the season still playing, even though he's not playing every game. But when one guy is in and out the lineup because of injuries, and then your other guy is aging, right, and kind of still needs the ball in his hands, even though, he's a great distributor and he's been a great point guard for this team. He needs the ball in his hands and he tends to hang on to it for quite a while. Just doesn't feel like the best recipe for success. Now, I don't think Kawhi and James Harden are the reason this team is stinking. I think Ty Lue hasn't been great at incorporating all of these different personalities and people. But to be honest, who would be? This is a very tough team to coach in terms of the different kinds of talent that you have and trying to mold this sort of chemistry, right? You lose a guy like Norman Powell, who is a big part of your offense. You replace him with Bradley Beal, who is, for lack of a better term, just not being good, right? Like it looks like Bradley Beal is just, I don't know, like he's aged like 10 years or something between like the last time he was a good player and now. It's very weird. Hopefully it's just a confidence thing and Bradley Beal's able to build back up and play at a high level, right? We don't need to see him average 30 again, but can he average 16 to 18 on decent efficiency? I think that's a reasonable expectation for a guy like him. Just shoot the ball, be a legitimate threat from three. And that whole thing, he's averaging like 8 to 10 points right now, which is, it's just strange. It's just strange how a guy, falls off like that. I'm not sure I understand it fully. But yeah, it's just interesting. It's just interesting, right? And I took a positive approach to the Clippers, but I don't feel I was confident in the Clippers. And it's still early in the season, right? We're 10 games in. We're about 10% through the season at this point. They can very well flip a switch, figure it out, and I still think that they will be in like the play-in hunt. But the West is so competitive, right? It's so competitive. If they don't make some changes fast, if they don't begin to figure some things out fast, you can be, 6-7 games out of the playoff hunt and just it's impossible to catch up at that point. Now, luckily, you can be the 10 seed and make it into the play-in. So if they're playing good basketball at the right time, then who knows? But there's not as much time as we would like to think where you can just figure things out. You have to start stringing at least some wins together, right? Try and maintain being 500 for a while until you can get it to click. If you can do that, be around 40 wins, and then all of a sudden you go on a 10-game, maybe not 10, but like a 6-game win streak here, a 4-game win streak there towards the end of the season, and you go from like a 41 win team to like a 45, 46. Now you're talking. but you're 3-7 right now, 3-8, something like that. You got to start making things shake quick, right? The holidays are right around the corner. Before we know it, it's going to be December. It's going to be the new year. We're going to be 35, 40 games into the season. You got to start moving and grooving. Atlanta is starting to, interestingly enough, play a little bit better, and it's without a lot of their core guys, which is interesting. I was super high on Atlanta coming into the season. I thought they had one of the best off seasons. It felt like all the guys that they were bringing in fit well with their best player in Trae Young, fit well just as a continuity as a whole, right? When you bring in a guy like Nickeil Alexander-Walker, when you bring in Kristaps Porzingis, when you have all these guys who, Luke Kennard, it's just going to take some time, I think. I wouldn't be too concerned with them because they are still winning games, right? They just crushed us, the Lakers, and then they beat the Clippers last night in a close game where James Harden played terrific. So, I mean, they're at least, 6-5 right now. I had an idea last week when they were like 4-6. I was like, oh, I'm about to come in and kill the Clippers. But they've done okay, right? 6-5 is okay. They were 4-5 last year, and now they're 6-5. So they've won 2 games in a row. Hopefully they get some of their guys back. I think Kristaps played last night, and they start to just create some continuity. But like that's a perfect example of what I mean. If they can maintain 500, right above 500, especially in the East, they'll be okay. And once they figure it out, now you're off to the races. And that's what I'm talking about. I would like to see out of the Clippers. So we'll see. It's been nice to see that they can maintain at a certain level, even though a lot of those guys are missing. So hopefully that they can continue to do that. Now, let's talk about down some things really quick. I don't want to spend too much time on them. Miami Heat have been playing terrific basketball. It's been fun to watch them play. High-paced offense. Norman Powell has been terrific. Bam missed a couple games, but when Bam is on the court, he's been terrific. He feels like he's taken a step this season in the scoring department, at least this far. I hope he maintains it. I would like to see him at that 23 range for the rest of the season. If he got up to 25, that would be even better. But it's just nice to see Bam being more aggressive. Their offense is faster paced. And I don't know what Tyler Hero's timetable is, but to be honest with you, I hope when he comes back that doesn't take away from what Norman Powell and Bam are doing, what Wiggins is doing, all those sorts of guys. I want them to continue to be aggressive and produce, especially Bam. When Tyler Hero comes back, I hope that doesn't take any shot volume away from Bam because he's such a talented player. We've all said it for years. He should be 22-10 every season, right? That 18-9, 18-9-5, right? That just doesn't cut it for the player, the talent that he is. He needs to be in that 22-25 range every season, and it's good to see him in that range this season. So really liked what the Miami Heat are doing. I think they were kind of a sleeper team, even though we know how good Spoelstra is and the Miami Heat culture is at galvanizing a squad and getting them to play at a high level. They are really good at making small moves and maximizing guys. So Jamie Jacques Jr. has been hooping, right? It's fun to watch him play, and the way he gets downhill is so impressive. But there's just a lot to like about this Miami Heat squad, and I think they're going to be a dangerous team in the East because when you get to the playoffs, their preparation is so good, their buy-in is so good, and their chemistry is so good that they're a tough out for anybody. The best team in the East, right? If it's Cleveland, if it's the Pistons right now. I don't know if that'll stay the same. Like, they will compete and will cause a hard time for anybody. When you have the versatility at center that Bam brings on offense and on defense, when you have a guy like Norman Powell who can really score the ball, a healthy Tyler Hero back, a wing defender like Andrew Wiggins, and a guy who can put the ball in the hole, a guy off the bench like Jamie, that's a recipe for success in the playoffs, right? And this is another Miami Heat team that if they're healthy and if everything's all good going into the playoffs can upset some teams and be a real problem. I love what I'm seeing out of Miami. Denver Nuggets, to be expected, right? Like we knew with the moves that they made in the offseason, they may have had the best offseason, quite honestly. Like just when you're talking about having Joker and then surrounding him with the pieces that you did, and also what you're getting out of guys who have been there now, right? Like they did tremendous job. First off, let's touch on Aaron Gordon and Jamal Murray playing very good basketball. It's amazing to me how much improvement Aaron Gordon is making over the last 2 seasons at like 28 to 30 years old. You know what I'm saying? Like guys don't usually improve this much this late into their career. But his three-pointers improving. They're giving him more confidence in playing on the perimeter, and he's allowing him to show and showing more confidence in his perimeter game. So getting downhill off the handle, creating things for his teammates, hitting pull-up jump shots, hitting spot-up jump shots. It's been fun to watch, and I think Jamal Murray is just healthy this season, and he's playing terrific basketball as well. Nikola has dialed it back a little bit in the scoring department, at least initially. He's kind of picked it up as of late, and I think he's just going to be a triple-double for, the rest of his prime at this point, right? Like, he's just, the way they play through him, the way their offense is facilitated through him, he's always going to be near 10 assists, and as good of a rebounder he is, he's always going to be near 10, 12 rebounds. You know what I'm saying? So I think at this point, he could, average a triple-double for 3 more years and do what Russell Westbrook did as well. Just because that's who he is now, and that's kind of how the way they run their offense. And he's 30, so I mean, he has 2-3 more years of prime left. I think he might just be a triple-double every season, to be honest with you, unless they make a calculated change in their offense and play a different way. Yeah, I think he'll be there. The only thing that's interesting to me is Cam Johnson, right? I think we were all high on the Cam Johnson swap for MPJ. So far, I mean, MPJ's hooping on a bad team, but he's hooping his butt off. And Cam Johnson has really struggled, and I'm not sure why, right? Like, maybe it's because he's used to being on a bad squad and he had a little bit more free reign, and he's really trying to just play within the system. Maybe overthinking things. He's a really smart player, and sometimes you get, smart players tend to overthink stuff. Myself, personally, I overthought stuff all the time, and it can really impact your playing. So maybe that's what's going on. But if they get him to start playing, averaging 15 a game, the sky's the limit for that team. The sky's the limit for that team, and that would be my favorite team to compete with OKC. I mean, they took them to 7 last year. You got better pieces now. That would probably be my favorite pick to really compete with and give problems to the Oklahoma City Thunder come playoff time. But we know who the Thunder are. The Thunder are juggernauts right now, and they're just, rolling, and they got such a good system, such good players. Plug and play guys as they come in and out of the lineups. They're tough to beat. Okay, next one. Detroit Pistons. I mean, what can I say about Detroit? They're number 1 in the East right now. I already talked about Cade unloading a clip yesterday and shooting the ball 45 times. They're playing great. They're playing good basketball. They got Jalen Duren back. He's competing. Duncan Robinson's playing good. They have had a few guys in and out of the lineups. But overall, man, they're just a good team. And Cade is playing at such a high level, right? If they win 55 games, why would he not be in the MVP race, right? They win 55 games, he should be top 3 in MVP voting maybe. You know what I'm saying? And who's to say that they won't in the East, right? No one has shown themselves to be head and shoulders over anybody in the East. The East, there's a lot of parity right now. The Cleveland Cavaliers, I thought with Darius Garland coming back, we're going to start to make that leap, but I'm pretty sure he just got hurt last night. So now it's an open field. And I very much think that you could see a world where the Detroit Pistons at the end of the season or the end of the regular season are the number 1 seed. And I wouldn't be surprised at that at all. Who knows, right? Who knows in the East? You got Orlando, who was a top 3 seed by most people's projections going into the season, playing not great basketball. They need to figure out their offensive pacing. It's just not good right now. They need to play faster, to be quite honest with you. They're just playing too slow. But yeah, I don't know. I could see a world where the Pistons are the 1-2 seed. And if that is the case, that's how many wins over the course of 2 seasons is that? Growth wise, right? They won 15 games 2 seasons ago and 46 last season, I believe. If they win 54 to 56 games, Cade has to be in MVP votes. And if he's not at least in the top 5, which I think he would need to be higher than that by the way his stats be looking, because there's a world where he averages 28, 9, and 7, 9 and 8. Are you kidding me? Right? He may be the MVP. He may need to be number 1. And we need to start that campaign because no one's talking about it. Right? You see the MVP voting list, it's all the same, right? It's all Joker or Shea, which obviously they're tremendous. They need to be up there. And Shea's going to win 60 games again probably. And Joker is going to average a triple-double again probably. But when we're talking about a narrative-driven award, which, be real, the MVP award is a narrative-driven award. A team that 2 years ago was at 15 wins, now at 55. What's a better narrative than that? And a guy averaging 28 to 30, 9-7, which is very possible. I think his numbers are even better than that. So I'm lowballing it, right? I'm accounting for things fluctuating, guys getting healthy, all that sort of stuff. He should be right there, right? He should be right there. And don't get me started, right? Just moving on really quickly on what Giannis is doing and the lack of respect that he gets. I think these MVP odds account for, Milwaukee maybe not winning enough games. That has to be the case because Giannis, to me, is playing the best basketball out of anybody when you're talking about on both ends of the floor. His offensive production is insane. I know people were saying last season that he wasn't as great defensively. This season, he has been great defensively as well, right? Like we can't just we can't do that, right? We can't say he was bad last season, but not be willing to look at what he's been doing this season and say he's been great so far. Like, how is he not top 3 MVP votes as well? Like, interesting stuff. I know it's early, right? There's still a lot of NBA to be played. Who cares about the odds? Whatever. But those two, man, the Detroit Pistons, I think Giannis is very comfortable being that lead dog right now with all those shooters surrounding him, all those guys who are just willing to play off him and allowing him to cook. He's not trying to, temper that aggression down at all. And goodness gracious, that man is a force. Giannis got to be my favorite player of this generation because I just love the way he competes. I love the way he competes. I love his mind of the game. And he's just fun to watch. But moving on. San Antonio Spurs. I think we all expected them to take a leap this summer. I mean, obviously, Victor Wembanyama came out the gates, guns blazing, literally just hooping, bodying dudes, playing strong, playing solid. And then for the last 4 games, it kind of tapered off when teams adjusted. They started putting smaller guys on him, more like 6'8" to 6'9" forwards who can get up under him and bother him a little bit more. And that seemed to really affect him. And that's going to be something that he's going to have to learn to play against throughout the course of his season because that's going to be a real way to guard him for the rest of his career, right? When you're 7'5", there's just not many centers who are going to be able to match up with and move their feet with a guy like Giannis. There are a few, right? There are a few centers who can move their feet good enough to stay in front of him, challenge shots, especially on the perimeter. But more than likely, you're going to need to put a smaller guy on him. And not to mention, smaller guys, strong center of gravities for somebody who's so long and slender, it's just going to be upsetting, right? You get a strong guy under there, put a forearm into you or something like that. Same thing with Kevin Durant early in his career, right? That was one way that people said you needed to guard him, and he figured it out, right? And Kevin Durant is about 4 or 5 inches shorter than Vic, right? So you can see how it's going to take some time for him to learn this. And we saw yesterday, right, them play the Chicago Bulls, and the Bulls just don't have the personnel to guard him the way that other teams have been guarding him. So he played great, right, and he killed in the fourth quarter. You got Nikola Vucevic on you. You probably should do that. Just being honest, right? Nikola's been having a heck of a season. He's not the most lateral quickness gifted person out there, and he struggles to move his feet on the perimeter a little bit. That mixed with Wemby, recipe for disaster. You just can't guard him. You know what I'm saying? So, and they don't have the wings that they can put on it and really make that a factor as well. So he played great. He's going to have to just continue to learn and grow and stuff. But in terms of Vic, who he is, he's another guy who should be in the MVP race, right? You're talking about the best defensive player in the game from a rim protection perspective. The way he just takes away lanes, takes away shots, affects shots, changes shots, right? Best defender in the game. It's hard to argue that, especially the best defending big in the game for sure. But I lost my train of thought. I mean, now they got De'Aaron Fox back. I really like De'Aaron Fox with Wemby. I really like that combination. And one of the reasons I like it so much is just you have a guy who can take some of that ball handling pressure off Wemby, especially as games get tight. And he's such a good closer, De'Aaron Fox is, that I think they're just going to win a lot of games this season, right? I think they're going to win over 50 games this season. And that's another guy, like I just said, will be in the MVP race. Wemby, that is, if they do make it, if they do win 50 plus games, top 3-4 seed in the West. I think that's a well-run franchise. We know that, and they've done a great job of rebuilding. you got guys like Dylan Harper out of the lineup right now, but what a great bench player. Vasil has been great. Castle's been great. Cornette is great alongside Wemby. I really like that additional piece. They just got to figure it out, man, and they're playing good. They're young. They're hungry. They feel like they're the best team in the league. I think there's a lot to like about that team, and I'm really happy about the development of that team. So, yeah, shout out to the Spurs, man, but they're going to be a team that's going to be at the top of the West as well. Like what I've seen out of them. Who else? Who else do we got to talk about? Houston Rockets. They've been good. I love what they're getting out of Kevin Durant. Even though he's had his moments of struggles, as to be expected for a 37-year-old. But I think they're in a good place, and I think Sengun. This is kind of what I thought. I thought KD may be their leading scorer, but Sengun would be their best player, right? They run the offense through him. He's their guy. He's a great ball handling big. He's a great playmaking big, and they got some good dynamics there. And then what you're getting through the size, through the defense. They're going to be at the top end of the West as well, just because they're a good defensive team with a really solid front court and some really solid perimeter defense. I think that's it for today, guys. I think I touched on who I wanted to touch on. Pause. My goodness, I touched on the teams that I wanted to talk about. Are there any other teams that I wanted to talk about? Not today. We'll save those ones for the next time. But we got teams like the Knicks that we could talk about. The Minnesota Timberwolves, now that Anthony Edwards is coming back, are looking good. They're a team that I wasn't as high on going into this season. I thought that they would take a little step back. Shout out to Julius Randle. He's been playing tremendous basketball. Anthony Edwards, when he's on the court, has been ultra efficient, shooting the ball at an extremely high level. And he just continues to add pieces to his game year after year, right? The perimeter shooting has been good. The back to the basket game and the mid post has been pretty good. The efficiency just continues to grow. The playmaking continues to grow. I like the little switch they made on adding Dante DiVincenzo to the starting lineup and bringing Conley off the bench. I think that's a good look for them, especially when you have a guy like Julius Randle, who is a good creating forward. So, yeah, I think there's a lot to like about the NBA. Guys have been playing at a high level, from Ant to Cade to Shea to Joker to Giannis to Luka to Bam playing at a higher level. I'm sure there are guys that I haven't mentioned. Denny Advida out there in Portland hooping, right? They've struggled a little bit. They're still a young team. A lot of guys just playing really high level basketball, and the league is just so talented right now. There's so much talent in the NBA right now. It's really fun to watch. So keep watching. We'll keep talking about it. Remember, if you like the content, make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment, engage, tell me where I'm tripping, tell me where I'm on point. It's been a lot of fun to watch this NBA season, and I'm excited to see where teams kind of separate themselves and continue to compete at a high level. Wish you guys all the best. Hope you guys enjoyed it.